Once you're able to retrieve a feed and understand the structure of the data, it's time to start showing the feed in our pages. Let's take a look at how we can do that with JavaScript and jQuery. First, we're going to need to remove some old code. I'm going to go to the blog section, and I'm going to get rid of this static text right here. So I'll scroll down and find that area and see it right here. So we're going to get rid of this collapsible set as well as each collapsible within. We'll just be left with a page with nothing in it. Since we're going to place some content on this container section, we're going to need to add an ID so we can target it. And we'll call this ID post list. So one of the nice things about jQuery Mobile is that it includes a copy of the jQuery library. So you can use selectors and methods from that library to help you build your application. So let me go over to the underscore folder and open up the JavaScript folder and find the file for our scripts, myscript.js. And if we take a look at our application right now, we can right click and select inspect element. And this will allow us to go into the section called the console. Right now, our application is outputting just the title of the posts in the data that we receive from our JSON feed. So I'm going to remove this title right here. Actually, I'll have it just output the data once again so we could look at the structure of the data. So I'm going to refresh. It gives you the object. So in this object, we can see a number of posts. In the posts, you can see stuff like the thumbnail, the title of the page, and other data, the URL, for example, to the post. So we could use a jQuery function called each. So I'll do a $each here. And then into each, I'm going to feed data and then feed it all the posts. So it's going to feed the array of posts. And it's going to execute a function. And that function is not going to have a name, but it's going to feed it the key and the value of each one of those items. And then I'll need to close this right here. And I need to put a period right there. This is going to go through each value in the posts that are in the data array, feed them into this key and value variables, and then we can use those to output things to our list. So I'll just go ahead and type in value and then type in title, because that's one of the items right here, title, semicolon there. So what I need to do is make sure that I send those to the console. This will output these into our console. So I'm going to refresh, and there we can see all of the titles for our posts. So that's really great. And I'm going to go ahead and type in some comments here just so that it's easier to follow later. So this function goes through each post, and this is the function that lists all the posts. Since we want to create a list, we're going to need to set up a variable, and we'll use this variable to store not only the value of the data, but also the HTML that you would normally type in to get it to display in a certain way. So out here, outside this function, I'm going to create a variable called output. And into that variable, I'm going to feed some information. And that is going to be almost as if I was typing this on a browser. I'm going to use single quotes because if you use single quotes, then anytime you type in double quotes, as you would in HTML, it's not going to have a problem with those. So they're actually a little bit easier to deal with. So I'll do unordered list data role equals list view and data filter, so that it has that filtering function, equals true. And I'll close this out. The first thing our function is going to do is create a variable called output and then store the first tag, the unordered list tag, with the data role of list view so that it's displaying the data that we're going to feed it as a list view. So since we're starting it over there, we're going to need to close it out here. For the end, we're going to need to say output, and we're going to do a plus equal because we want to add to the previous value that we gave it right here. So we don't want to delete it. If you just put equals, it's just going to set the value to that. If you put plus equals, it'll add it into the existing value. Again, single quotes, and we will just put in a closing tag for the unordered list here. After that, we're going to need to send the information into our post list ID. So to do that, I'm going to use jQuery again, and I'm going to target the post list, and I'm going to set the HTML of that to my output variable. So now I need to do the bulk of the work, which is right here. So if I want to output something, then it's going to look pretty much like this. I'll copy this line. I'll replace this and indent a little bit. So I'm going to add a list item. And of course, I'll have to close it. Then I'm going to add a headline level 3 tag. And I'll close this one right here. And inside that, I want to output the value.title and hit a plus sign here. So what's happening is as it goes through each post, the value variable will get whatever the value of the current item is. So you can see here the different values of each one of the items from the feed. So what I can do to call the titles of each of these posts is just use the value and then use the dot title. And I can do the same thing for other things. Like if I want to get the excerpt, then it would look exactly like this, excerpt. And of course, I'd have to change this to a paragraph so it doesn't all look like headline level 3 tags. So let's go ahead and save this and we'll refresh the page. And I need to make this a little smaller. So you can see that it's now reading the information from the feed and displaying it into our blog page as a list item. And it's formatting the list item as it would if we did it manually. So that's really cool. With just a few lines of code, we've been able to create a page that's going to get the data and display it automatically as a list. So we no longer have to worry about updating our application all the time.